Buongiorno a tutti. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this last conversation of this 24-hour event. My name is Lucia Rampino. I'm a product design professor at Politecnico di Milano, and I'm here today in conversation with great pleasure with Sara Colombo from Eindhoven Technical University. Hi, Sara. How are you?
Hi, Lucia. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, we will discuss how digital technologies, data, and artificial intelligence are opening new avenues for design, the design discipline, the design research, and the design practitioner. So, first of all, Sara, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you. So, my name is Sara Colombo. I'm an assistant professor at the Eindhoven University of Technology. In the industrial design department. And I actually recently joined this university last year, but before then I was working and living in the US. So actually I'm a designer by education, and I studied at Politecnico di Milano. So that's my origin. I'm very close to that community. And after getting my degree and my master degree in design and engineering, I moved to pursue my PhD still at Politecnico. And then after a few years as a postdoc there, I moved to MIT in Boston, where I was working at the design lab. And I was a senior research associate there. I was leading projects on envisioning the future of emerging technologies and their applications in different industries. And then after that, I got a position as a research scientist at Northeastern University. And finally, I moved back to Europe just a few months ago as an assistant professor.
Okay, so very young, at least from my point of view, but already a lot of experience. So we know each other very well, Sara, because I used to be the supervisor of your PhD research here at Politecnico di Milano. That research was, let's say, already on the premises of what you are dealing with today. It was on digital technology and connected products, smart products, and the possibility to engage users with a different kind of multisensory language. So, but a couple of years, as you said, after you got your PhD here in Politecnico di Milano, you left Italy and you start your exciting, I would say, research career abroad. So, when after leaving POLIMI, you did start working on artificial intelligence?
That happened basically as soon as I moved to MIT, when I was working on different emerging technologies, but especially and including AI and machine learning and data in different ways. The interesting thing is that when I started to work on designing with these technologies and envisioning how they could change, as I said, different industries. So from the energy industry to the fashion to sportswear, the first projects were really mainly focused on the functionalities of these systems. So how data, machine learning, and AI could transform the features of adaptive systems and how they could generate new user experiences. But then over time, it actually changed, and my approach has moved more towards ethical considerations and helping designers to bring the human perspective onto what they were doing. So I can give you a few examples of what I've been working on in these projects. And the first project that I tackled when I was working at the design lab was on health and safety in the energy industry. So we were looking at how technologies from flexible sensors to adaptive materials to AI and data could bring innovation into this sector. And we generated a number of different solutions, an ecosystem of solutions actually all connected, which could exchange a huge amount of data. And we're going from detecting hazards in the environment automatically through image recognition to remote medical assistance through AI agents or autonomous drones for inspection of confined spaces, up to predicting medical conditions based on the data about the users' exposures to different environments and chemical and physical hazards. So predicting what medical conditions could arise by different exposure to environments. But again, our focus was really main on how we could generate new innovative products and services and new experiences for users. So something that could make the environment safer. Another project was, for instance, on much more far in the future. So it was a vision for the next 25 years of how a city could change and how AI could be embedded into everyday spaces, environments, and products to make the citizen feel cared for by the city itself. And again, this was much more focused on the user experience and generating very engaging situations and environments. But there was a lack of try to understand and assess the impact that these technologies can have on users and society. So fast forwarding quite a lot after, or the last project that I was working on, and I'm still working on this project with Northeastern University, had actually quite a different perspective on AI and data. Because in this case, this project is about misinformation and how filtering algorithms can modify and change and actually select completely the information we are exposed to on social media. So these filtering systems can actually create bubbles and echo chambers where we're stuck in, and we are exposed continuously to the same topics and we consume the same kind of sources. And this creates a huge issue because misinformation can spread much more quickly in these environments, digital environments. So the project we are performing in this area is about how to change how to create new user experiences and interfaces that can actually communicate to users what they're exposed to. So what are the consequences of these machine learning algorithms that control basically the news that we consume online. So that's quite a different perspective. It is still about design and user experience, but it has a very important component that was missing in other projects and in other in previous years, that is about considering the impact that these technologies are having on people and how design can intervene to bring back this human element into the discussion, because design is able to connect these words and also to bring ethical considerations to the table. So it was very interesting to see how also the conversation with colleagues or with tech experts changed over time. And starting from something that was much more functional, now it's becoming a systemic approach, looking at the human side and the technological side all together.
Okay, very interesting. I am curious to know, you mentioned the first project, that it was pretty clear to me that you had some industrial partner collaborating on them. I was asking myself while you were describing the last project, the one on the, let's say, ethical, social impact of using this machine learning algorithm in selecting the information we are exposed to. Is this a project that is just an academic project, or do you have an external partner, an industrial or non-academic partner also involved in this second kind of research?
At the moment, this is a project that was funded by internal funding from Northeastern University. So we got a grant to work on this project. And it's actually very interesting because we are collaborating with people from the School of Journalism. So not only designers, but also people who have a background in a different discipline and that can bring their perspective on our work as well. But also we have been in touch with people from the industry. So from a couple of companies that actually work in the social media area. We are not involving them officially, but the idea of this project is to create background knowledge that can be used in order to apply either for other grants or involve industrial partners. So the final goal would actually be to have an impact. And what we're working on in this project is really generate different interfaces that can show visualize for instance, the social media feed in a different way by clustering the topics that you're exposed to. And by doing that, you're able to actually, you have much more awareness of what you're exposed to and what news you consume. So we are testing these different interfaces with users, and we're collecting feedback. We're trying to understand how design can intervene in order to limit the consequences and the downsides of these types of algorithms.
Okay, this is, I mean, you confirmed my feeling. I would say that the topic, the ethical consequences of embedding product services with artificial intelligence, with machine learning, of course, open the field to many, let's say, moral decision from the designer or from the side of anyone involved in designing, not just designers, of course, such algorithms, such products, such possibilities. But on the other side, this is a very growing topic in academia. It's not so equally perceived outside academia. I mean, there are some first non-academic partners that are starting, of course, to take into consideration these issues, but it's more difficult to have them, to say it plain, invest money on such kind of research. So your experience also confirm what we are experiencing here at POLIMI, or not? Because I
yeah, I mean, partially what we can all witness actually is an attempt by these companies to bring a more ethical view into that. And I mean, being very careful in using this word because, of course, I mean, it's a very complex topic. But at least what we can see is that there is an attempt to create some interventions to limit the negative consequences of these technologies. And for instance, on Instagram, we saw at some point that in some countries they removed the number of likes to a picture that everyone could see at the beginning, but at some point they removed this information from the interface. Not everywhere, just in some countries it was a test, and now it's like, depending on when I travel, sometimes I can see it, sometimes I can't. It's very funny. But the point is that they're trying to implement some elements, but it's just a reaction. It's just a consequence of the debate that is growing into society about these elements. So what is harder, more difficult to see is a proactive approach on this. And of course, there are ethical committees and ethical groups in these big tech companies, but design is not always there. That's one point. So we are talking about design, and it's interesting to see and to reflect on what our role can be. And on the other side, it's very much, I mean, there are companies, so they have a different purpose than doing ethical things, at least at this stage. So my hope and my attempt also in my research is trying to bring more awareness on these topics to designers so that they can grow with this competence and this awareness from the beginning, and they can bring it into their work in companies or like wherever they're going to work in their life, but at least keep this perspective and apply that into the designs that they would create.
Yes, of course, this is fundamental as academic for the education of future generation of designers. They should become aware of these very complex topics. You are right. Ethics is not a trivial word. There are philosophers, many scholars debating about what ethics is, and it's of course not the competence of designers, but we are starting to debate seriously about these issues in academics, and of course it's also our duty to transfer what we do in research into the education of the future generation of designers. So before leaving the USA, and coming to your present experience in the Netherlands. Last year, during the pandemic, you, by your own initiative, if I'm not wrong, you created a very interesting research activity designed for emergency, and an activity that also had a quite international resonance. I saw you on TV here in Italy on La Sette presenting this research activity, if I'm not wrong, together with Paolo Ciuccarelli. I was curious. Of course, it was focused on what we all experienced last year. So the pandemic situation being, I do remember we meeting in Milan at the beginning of February or the end of January, if I'm not wrong. So a few days before, no, it was February, but a few weeks before the explosion of the problem. And I'm curious if also in this research activity you exploited, let's say, the possibility of artificial intelligence. So if artificial intelligence or machine learning are somehow connected also to this, to your, I would say, last research activity before leaving the US.
Yes, that's one of my heart projects or side projects that really started as a reaction to what was happening in Italy. You're right. I was there just a couple of weeks before the lockdown, and it was a bit shocking to be in the US. For both Paolo Ciuccarelli and myself, we were working together at the Center for Design at Northeastern, and yeah, it was shocking to see what was happening in Italy, and we were very far away, so we were, following all the news and what was happening from far, but we really needed this, or were missing this understanding of the problem from the inside. But we also felt the need somehow to intervene, since in the US there was not that, the crisis had not started yet. We were not in lockdown yet, so it arrived a couple of weeks later. But as soon as the lockdown was implemented in Italy, we realized that we wanted to do something. We wanted to use design to tackle the problems that were connected to the lockdown and to what people were experiencing in that moment. So we started this project, Design for Emergency, as an attempt to bring the design community together and to identify what people were going through and what people, the needs of people in that moment. So we started with a survey, and that's where AI comes. It's actually been used somehow because we started with a survey that was meant to collect the feelings and the emotions and the issues that people were experiencing at that time. So we launched the survey in Italy, and in the span of, I think, 3-4 days, we collected 1,500-1,600 responses. And we did not expect that huge response from people. So we found ourselves with a lot of data to analyze, because we wanted to cluster or to identify, to find some common issues that could serve as directions for designers to create solutions for people in that moment. So we had this huge amount of data, of information, because half of the questions in our survey were actually open questions. So we had a lot of text to analyze. And we decided to use natural language processing. So we got in touch with experts in this field who had already analyzed huge amounts of text, and we selected a tool to run the analysis automatically and identify keywords that were more frequently used in response to each question. So that's how AI somehow got into the process, even if it was not planned from the beginning, but it became an important tool for us to be able to quickly analyze this data and identify these design directions, and again, quickly respond by design solutions. So that's another avenue that I'm exploring in my work, how AI can be used by designers in their processes, how data, machine learning, and AI can can innovate the design process, can create tools that support the work of designers. So this is a way in research. We know that as designers, understanding your user, creating empathy is very important. But that's also why we usually, it's easier for us to interview people, to have one-on-one discussions, which is very valuable. But sometimes the problem is huge and you need to analyze a huge amount of information. So AI can help in this, and that's one solution. But there are also other ways for AI to intervene. So, for instance, with a student actually from Politecnico di Milano that I co-supervised a couple of years ago, his master thesis was about generating mood boards by AI algorithms, by generative adversarial networks. So creating mood boards for designers that were completely artificially generated. And that was a very interesting exploration of how to bring this technology close to the design field, not as a way to design new services based on this technology, but as a way to support the process and the activities of designers.
Yes, these are, of course, the two side of AI in the design field. So you can use let's say, embed artificial intelligence in your final product or service, or you can use it as a design tool, I would say. I was thinking, listening to you, what you were saying somehow implied that probably design students should learn at least to write simple algorithms. Do you think that this is going to be important probably today or in the next few years, that they are able to really, let's say, put their hands on this design material, this new knowledge, possibility, technology? As usual, I would say design has always to deal with evolving technologies, but
yeah, that's a very tricky question, a complex one, and there is a huge debate about how far designers who want to work in this field, because of course not all designers have to do this, but designers interested in working with machine learning and data, how far should they go into understanding the technology and being able, as you said, to actually work with the technology and get their hands dirty with AI. And it's a complex one, because I think this debate has always been there also in the past for other technologies. So for instance, my background is design and engineering, and I was very interested in understanding more in depth how products were built, how they were manufactured, because I felt that I was missing this knowledge while generating and designing products. And that was an essential knowledge, because when you design a product but you don't know how this is going to be manufactured, you can make a lot of mistakes. So this degree that is actually still there, this degree program at Politecnico, was really helpful in letting me understand much better the details of the technologies that I was using or the companies were going to use to manufacture the products that I would design. So I think that this debate was there because, again, there was a lot of discussion on how far designers should go into engineering in order to be able to be designers. But years later, it's still here with a different technology, which is, again, data and machine learning. So my personal perspective is that there is definitely the need for designers to understand and to learn how to use data and machine learning. And right now, there is an incredibly huge gap between these two disciplines. There are a lot of efforts to bring these two together, but we're still far from having a structured program or a plan to do this as a discipline. But on the other side, I think, of course, there can be many different degrees and variations of this, of how much we should bring these two together. But I don't think that designers need to be computer scientists in order to work with AI. But I do think that they need to understand this technology, to study and to learn how it works, the principles, the underlying mechanisms, the different models of machine learning. But this is also a very super dynamic field. So things change constantly, and things update and improve constantly. So this technology is also, a very difficult to condense into very short programs to give designers in order to learn how to operate with this. But still, it's super relevant and very important to have technical knowledge of this. The good, probably, one of the possibilities for designers is that many tools are coming out that allow designers to, or even different kind of experts, not only designers, to operate with machine learning models without knowing all the details of this technology, all the details of the algorithm. And these are layers in between the pure algorithm and the final outcome. And these are interfaces that allow designers to play around with different types of algorithms and getting an output. So I think that this might be one of the avenues that we can take as designers. So you still need to understand how this technology works, how algorithms works, how different approaches works, and most importantly, how you can work with data, how you can organize data, collect it, but also clean it up and create a proper data set that you can use for these tools. So there is definitely the need to go much more into the technology side. But my personal perspective is that designers do not need to write their own algorithms to design with machine learning. Otherwise, they would be computer scientists. So we can still bring a lot of value and a lot of like human elements to the table, but we need to be able to converse with experts in this field. And that's another very relevant point. So we need to have the tools to design with this technology, but also the language and the knowledge to converse and to collaborate with experts, data scientists and computer scientists, because without this, we are going to be left out from the innovation that happens around this technology as it is happening now most of the time.
Yeah, this is super interesting and super relevant. And of course, since, as you said, is a rapidly evolving field, it's quite difficult from the academic point of view to catch up with such fast change and to update our teaching offering, of course. So my last question to you, since you are now, as far as I know, in a very multidisciplinary university with a lot of colleagues dealing with the things that you have just said, what are you up to right now? What are you focusing on in your brand new experience at Eindhoven Technical University?
Yeah, of course, I'm still working on these topics. This is the core of my research activity, but also educational activity here at UE. And my main focus is very connected to what we just discussed. So I'm very interested, and I'm trying to develop toolkits for designers to operate in the field of data and machine learning, and to help them to understand the complexity of the process of innovating through this technology. And so this is more on the educational side, if you want, not only for design students, but also for designers in general. And then the other perspective is more on the ethical side. So try to help designers not only to create innovative products and services that can be adaptive, personalized, or contextualized based on data and machine learning, but also how to assess or anticipate the assessment of the impact of the solutions that they're going to create on people, on their users, but also on society as a whole. Because if you think about what's happening in, for instance, I'm going to give you a quick example. Google has just released a tool for detecting skin conditions from pictures. They don't talk necessarily directly about cancer, because of course that can be difficult, but they talk about skin conditions. And still, if you bring this to the extreme, we can imagine a world where diagnostics of certain conditions is distributed. And what kind of impacts does it have on the healthcare system, on the relationship between the patient and the doctor, but also on the relationship between people and hospitals. So it's a huge challenge, and that is opened up by just creating a new solution that can appear very, innovative and great, and it probably has amazing possibilities and applications. But still, what are the consequences? What is the impact that this is going to create? So I think that we cannot be naive on this anymore as designers. So we need to be more aware of the consequences of our design, because when you use data and these kinds of technologies, the implications are really huge and ramified. So you have to, think this through while you are designing something new.
Thank you very much, Sara. In the background, they are celebrating because we crossed the line of the 24 hours.
So it was an honor to be the last one.
Evviva!